Hey ladies and gentlemen, and Krzysztof the Polish Geek, and happy Polish Independence Day, because that's right, here in Poland it's Independence Day. Just as in the United States Independence Day is July 4th, here in Poland it's November 11th, because after World War I, after around like 100-something years, like I'm not particularly good with the dates, but after World War I, that's when Poland regained independence, after it was divided between Russia, Austria and the Prussian Kingdom. And it's a big event in Polish history. So yes, November 11th, it's Polish Independence Day. In Warsaw there's actually a military parade every year. Like United States has fireworks, Poland has a military parade that I often actually watch, but now in Polish, wesołego Dnia Niepodległości wszystkim moim rodakom i oczywiście mi. I na Dzień Niepodległości postanowiłem zrobić 10 najlepszych polskich filmów. So, as I just said in Polish, for the Polish Independence Day, I decided to celebrate it by making a video of 10 best Polish movies. Because in the past, at least, like in the 20th century especially, there were plenty of actually phenomenal Polish movies. Although sadly, Hollywood practically destroyed almost every European movie industry, so there still isn't that many modern ones. But in 20th century, there were so plenty of phenomenal Polish movies, and I'm going to make a top 10 list of my 10 favorite Polish movies of all time. And it doesn't mean that all of them are from 20th century, there are several from 21st actually. But yes, I think in general Polish movie industry has been at its best throughout the 20th century. And it's not just movies, there's actually plenty of phenomenal Polish media, probably better than the movies. Like plenty of books, like I will actually show you for demonstration, like there is this book by Polish writer Jacek Dukaj, Polish science fiction writer, phenomenal sci-fi writer. And then there is, of course, Potop, which is part of trilogy by my favorite Polish writer of all time, and actually one of my favorite storytellers of all time, probably second only next to J.R.R. Tolkien. And this is one of his best books, Potop, which is called The Deluge in English. And yes, spoiler alert, several of those favorite movies will indeed be adaptations of Sienkiewicz magnificent books. And also, of course, The Witcher books and video games. I admit, I've still yet to read The Witcher. Yeah, pretty embarrassing for a Polish person. I still have yet to read The Witcher books, but I'm a gigantic fan of the video games. The video games are some of my favorites of all time. I love the video games, but fuck the Netflix abomination. Oh, and also, and for Polish TV shows, there are actually two paradocumentary shows I really love. One of them is called Szkoła, which translates to school in English, and it's this paradocumentary series that's about like the life of high school students and all, and admittedly plenty of stories are admittedly pretty silly and over the top. And the show actually has a very, very negative reputation, but screw all those opinions. I love that show and I always watch it to improve my mood. And another one is another paradocumentary that's actually somewhat more liked actually, and it's called Gliniarze, which literally translates to cops. And it's, on the other hand, it's also a paradocumentary, but it's, on the other hand, focuses on the cops and the police investigation and catching a criminal. In the end, yep, I adore both of those two shows. One is perfect to bring me in a better mood, and the other one is just an awesome police investigation stuff. Kind of like Polish CIA, but I actually like it a lot more. But enough talk about all the other Polish media I love. Now, let's get on with my top 10 favorite Polish movies of all time. Starting number 10, it's Chłopi, which in English it will translate to The Peasants. And this is actually the most recent movie on this list, and it only came out last year, literally last year, and I actually reviewed it back when it came out, and everything I said back then pretty much holds true now very much. This movie is pretty much a one-time watch for me, and it's actually based on a classic of Polish literature by Polish writer Władysław Reymont, who wrote this book, The Peasants, Chłopi, and the movie is based on that book, and I actually haven't read this book. This book is a required read for all Polish high school students, but I've probably said a couple of times on this channel already, I went to high school to a boarding school in the United States, so because of that I never read that book, but almost all my Polish friends have in fact read it, and I already know that this book is very much a nemesis to all Polish high school students who very much, because it's a very tough read. But yes, a classic of Polish literature, and it basically, as I said though, for me it's a one-time watch, because because the book is about, and so is the movie of course, life of Polish peasants in the 19th century village. And what I love in this movie is that people act how people in those times actually really did act. And yes, the ending is very heartbreaking, but I've been hearing later that apparently that's obviously what the book ends, so the movie just did the same ending that the book did, and if I didn't like it, all I can say is that maybe just not my type of a story, but in fact I heard from some people that apparently the ending, some say, is even too happy compared to the type of ending the book had, but it doesn't change the fact I still think this is very much a movie that everyone should see at least once, especially if they want to experience Polish culture, because this, as I said, it takes place in a 19th century Polish village, and it reflects the life of peasants, and also it's animated, and what I really love is how creative the animation is, because it's basically a Renaissance painting style animation. Like, this is so unique, oh my gosh, it's unlike anything I ever seen before. I really love that, and I also love the immersive feel of the village and all that, the visuals, and also the Polish folk music is amazing. So yeah, this is the type of movie, even though for me it's very time and one-time watch, this is very much the type of movie I would recommend for at least one-time watch, just due to how creatively done it is and all that, and to truly immerse yourself in a Polish culture and all that. So, Chłopi, in English The Peasants, at number 10. Number 9, and this time it's an adaptation of a famous Tchaikovsky ballet, The Nutcracker, and yes, I'm a huge fan of the Russian Tchaikovsky ballet, The Nutcracker, just like, I really love it. I love all the costumes and the dances and the music, especially, so fantastic and magical. Oh my gosh, I just love The Nutcracker so much. And although I'm talking about the ballet now, currently we didn't get the movie yet, but yeah, I love the Nutcracker ballet so much, and even the story is actually pretty interesting. And this movie is an adaptation of The Nutcracker, and the story is pretty much faithful to the original Tchaikovsky ballet. And I really like the acting in this movie, and the magical atmosphere, and the characters, I think, are well done and all that, and the costumes are really good. And also, this is one of those movies I've been watching a lot in my childhood, so yes, nostalgia does play a big role here. But I love it. The one big full problem though I do have in this movie, in fact, though, is the complete lack of the ballet music. Like, this sucks so much. Like, the ballet music from The Nutcracker is just so amazing, magnificent, so magical, and the fact that the movie doesn't have it is a huge strike against it. Everything else about the movie though is amazing, phenomenal. But I do wish that the music of The Nutcracker was in fact used. And if I had to pick a favorite adaptation of The Nutcracker, this might actually possibly be it, with the although again, as I already said, the fact that it doesn't have music from the original ballet does make me a little hesitant to put it as the best film adaptation of a Nutcracker, but other than that, I love it and it very much belongs here. Number 8, and this is actually a movie that was actually done by the same people that did number 10, Chłopi, although I actually think it's a much better movie, and it was actually made before Chłopi, but I've seen it after, and it's Loving Vincent. And yes, this movie, just like Chłopi before it, actually after it, but I've seen this one after is also done for animation, except that this time it's because a biography of Vincent van Gogh, who I think is probably the greatest artist that ever lived. Either him, Pablo Picasso, or this Polish guy Jan Matejko, but yes, I think Vincent van Gogh is in my holy trinity of the greatest painters and artists. Like, all his paintings are just so beautiful, fabulous, and such a great art. Like, oh my gosh. And this movie is a biography of Vincent van Gogh, but it's told through the style of his paintings, and it's so interesting. Like, this is the movie that I just recommend just to watch the beautiful art of Vincent van Gogh style paintings and see his biography unfold through beautiful animation in the style of his beautiful paintings. Like, oh my gosh. You totally should see this. Number 7, and here we have a first movie adaptation of one of the books by Henryk Sienkiewicz, and this is, in Polish the title is W pustyni w puszczy, and in English, In the Desert and in the Wilderness, and it's based on a Henryk Sienkiewicz book about those two European kids, Polish boy and English girl, living in Africa and then being kidnapped by the locals for ransom of their parents, and then later, of course, they take away a gun of Staś Tarkowski, one of the two children, but then there is the lion who attacks them, but the kidnappers don't know how to use a rifle, so they give a rifle back to Staś, who kills the lion, and then he just kills the kidnappers, and then the kids travel on their own through the wilderness of Africa to find their fathers. And this is such an amazing story. I just love the relationship between Staś Tarkowski and Nell Rowlison and all that, and I also love the other characters, like the two black locals that the kids are friends with, Kali and Nea and all that. I love the book and I love this movie adaptation. Later, actually, in the year 2001, the movie got actually a remake, another adaptation, but I think the original movie from the 70s, I believe, or 80s, not sure when the older version was made, but I think the older version is much better. Like, I just love the story of the movie, the characters, and I also love the wilderness of Africa and all that. Yep, really love In the Desert and Wilderness, both the book and the first adaptation. Number 6, and this is one of the biggest classics of Polish cinema in history. This is Ziemia Obiecana, and in English it would be called The Promised Land, and it's set in the 19th century in the Industrial Revolution in the Polish city of Łódź. And by the way, in the Polish city of Łódź, that's actually where basically Polish Hollywood is located, although it's not woke, but that's a different story altogether. Because yes, in Łódź, that's where most of the movie studios are located, and this movie, The Promised Land, tells a story of three friends in the Industrial Revolution, a Polish guy, a German guy, and a Jewish guy, and how they all want to build a factory and all that, and really, really interesting story. Also, I love the imagery in this movie and the way the city is presented, and also about the struggle to survive and to make money and all that. I love the themes of this movie and the cinematography, as well as the story and the characters, and the dialogue is really good, and some of the conversations are really interesting. Like, no wonder this is a classic of the Polish cinema. But the best thing about it, though, is the truly immersive atmosphere of the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, and the way the director Andrzej Wajda, the way he just presented the city, how it's devoid of life because of all the industries and people struggling to make some money and all that. It's simply excellent. Although this is the type of movie that you truly have to think and be in a mood for. This is certainly not the type of movie you'd watch every day, but The Promised Land, a classic of a Polish cinema, and number 6 on this list. Number 5, and this is a medieval historical movie, King Boleslas the Bold. In Polish, Król Bolesław Śmiały, and this is a movie from 1971, and it tells a fascinating event in Polish history about a conflict between a Polish king, Boleslas, and a bishop, Stanisław of Szczepanów, in Polish Stanisław ze Szczepanowa. And this is a really fascinating history, one of my favorite historical events. It's so interesting, fascinating, I love it so much. And yes, probably the conflict does sound very similar to a conflict between King Richard and Thomas Becket, and yeah, like, those conflicts are actually very similar and they are very frequently compared to. In Polish history, this conflict is actually very similar actually. So yeah, like, and what I love in this movie is that the story is that how it was in real life, that King Boleslas is kind of a ruthless king. His intention is to keep Poland independent together, but because of that he becomes a pretty ruthless king as a result. And there is even a scene, although this is a legend, there is no proof that this specific thing happened, but there is a scene in the beginning of the movie how he basically takes a bastard baby from a woman and gives it the dogs and then asks her to feed a baby puppy. Like, this is some really disturbing stuff. And then of course the bishop Stanislas, who, fun fact, is a saint in the Catholic Church actually. He's like one of the major patron saints of Poland, who stands up against the king. And then the whole, although the conflict is not quite presented as black and white, because some elements actually show us the bishop partially claiming to stand for the people, but in some ways actually being a traitor to the country of Poland and controlled by the German Empire. Like, the movie doesn't exactly take sides. It tries to show a more gray area in the conflict, and basically it also shows how throughout history there has been so many conflicts between the church and the secular powers, and this movie perfectly reflects that in religious power of the bishop and the church and the secular power of the king. And the movie, for the most part, is actually pretty historically accurate, and I really love it. This is literally one of my favorite historical events, and I just love learning about it so much. And I think the movie totally does it justice. That's why King Boleslas the Bold, Bolesław Śmiały, at number 5. Number 4, and we are entering into another historical movie and also another one of the Henryk Sienkiewicz adaptations, because Potop the Deluge. And yep, the book is actually much better than the movie actually. It's actually probably my second favorite of the Sienkiewicz books. And does the book justice? Not fully actually. If it did it fully justice, then it probably would be higher on the list, but it's still really great for what it is. I love the story of the movie, and Andrzej Kmicic is possibly my favorite character by Sienkiewicz, or certainly one of them, and I think that the actor who plays him is phenomenal, and I also really love his love interest Olenka and all that, and I really love the story of the movie, the themes and the historical events happening and all that, as well as all the character interactions and some really interesting conflicts between those characters. Yep, The Deluge is a phenomenal movie, but again, the book is truly magnificent. The book is actually much better than a movie, and as I said, if it done the book 100% justice, it would be even higher on this list. Still, fantastic for what it is, and number 4 on the list. Number 3, and we're coming to another Sienkiewicz adaptation, which actually is a sequel to Potop. I mean, the book is a sequel. The movie was actually made before Potop, although that's a different story. Why was it? But it's Colonel Wolodyjowski, Pan Wolodyjowski, and although when it comes to books, I actually think, as I said, that Potop the Deluge is actually much better than Pan Wolodyjowski, but when it comes to movie adaptations, I actually think I prefer Pan Wolodyjowski more, because I just love the character of Colonel Wolodyjowski, and I think that Tadeusz Łomnicki is a fantastic choice to play him. I mean, he was such a magnificent choice, and all that, and I also love the cinematography on this movie, and the story is really great. The music is simply beautiful, and it's by far one of my favorite adaptations of the Henryk Sienkiewicz book. I think this movie very much does real justice to the book. So, yeah. When it comes to books, I very much prefer Potop, but when it comes to movies, I think I prefer Pan Wolodyjowski. Number 2, and this is not just one of my favorite Polish movies, it's also literally one of my favorite movies ever of all time, and also one of my favorite science fiction movies, and it's Sexmission, in English Sexmission, and I already talked about it before, I think, because I did my top 10 favorite science fiction movies of all time, and I remember this very much was on the list, and yes, I really loved that movie, and it's so politically incorrect and funny, and modern Hollywood would very much hate it, but I really love it. The story is about those two men who undergo an experiment to be frozen, but then the experiment goes wrong and they accidentally sleep for 50 years, and then they awaken in like a post-apocalyptic, oppressive feminist society where all men become extinct, and radical feminism is promoted, and the women want to use surgery to turn those two men into women, and yep, I really love that movie. It's so funny, and the story is so great, and the actors are phenomenal, and I love also how politically incorrect this is. So yeah, this movie is awesome, and I could watch it over and over again. And at number 1, my favorite Polish movie of all time, and in my top 5 favorite movies ever of all time, based on one of my favorite books of all time, is another Henryk Sienkiewicz adaptation, Krzyżacy, or in Polish would be called Knights of the Cross. Yep, this is by far my favorite book of Henryk Sienkiewicz, and also my favorite adaptation based on one of his books, and even though the book is still better, I think the movie very much does the book justice. I just love the story, the medieval setting and the characters, and while the costumes do look a bit dated, they're still great overall. The story is so well written, as are all the dialogues and all. And as I just said, I consider Henryk Sienkiewicz one of my favorite storytellers ever. Actually, my second favorite storyteller ever, only behind J.R.R. Tolkien. And as I said, this is my favorite book of his, and my very much favorite adaptation of all his books. But I also think that to truly appreciate this masterpiece, I really think you should study some Polish medieval history about Polish wars with Knights Teutonic and all that. Because this is when you truly can appreciate how amazing this movie is, and it also depicts my favorite medieval battle ever, Battle of Grunwald, which is a very significant battle in Poland when the Polish beaten Knights Teutonic in a decisive victory, and the Grand Master of the Teutonic Order actually perished in that battle. Yep. I really love Battle of Grunwald, and I also love Krzyżacy, Knights of the Cross, both the book and the movie. This is not only my favorite Polish movie, but it's also one of my favorite movies of all time. And also, together with Kingdom of Heaven, my favorite medieval movie of all time. I love Knights of the Cross, Krzyżacy. I love it. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. So, here you have my 10 favorite Polish movies of all time. I think this was a perfect list to make on Polish Independence Day of November 11th. And I will say it once again now to all my Polish friends. Wesołego Dnia Niepodległości wam wszystkim i mi też. Jeszcze Polska nie zginęła, póki my żyjemy. No więc Wesołego Dnia Niepodległości and... Thank you all of you for checking out this video. Press the like button. Please subscribe this channel and I will talk to you soon in another video. Talk to you later. Bye.